Okay. Whoa.
You've discovered a new feature in Google Plus, Andy.
That's quite possibly the best thing I've ever seen in my life. Oh my goodness.
That's awesome.
Well, I'm going to try to get rid of that, but let's go ahead and get started. Wow. So, yeah, sorry about that, everybody. Sorry, we had some more, obviously, technical difficulties tonight because mine was right in the middle of my face.
That's awesome.
And Matt Sheehy is with us. Matt, can you go ahead and get your camera up again?
Hi.
There you are. All right, very good. And I'm going to make him the center of attention because, yeah. Okay. Goodness gracious. Everybody, welcome tonight to our hangout, the MyMoon CosmoQuestX Hangout with Matt Sheehy from the group Lost Lander. He's a lead singer. And with me again tonight is Pamela Gay with CosmoQuestX. I'm Andy Chandler with the Lunar Planetary Institute in Houston. And we're going to chat with Matt tonight about music, space, space music, whatever combination you want to discuss. You can, if you're watching us on YouTube, of course, you can use the comments there to ask questions. We will be able to get those questions and ask Matt for you. You can also comment through Twitter. Use the hashtag MyMoonLPI, which you see there in my bottom third. I'll bring it up real quick and now get away. And you can also comment if you're watching us on the MyMoon Google event page. You can comment through there. We can get your questions that way as well. So without any further ado, again, we're with Matt Sheehy from Lost Lander. He's the lead singer. And they're a group out of Portland, Oregon, and they just released, I think about a year ago, I think it was, their debut album, which is pretty cool, has a planetarium with it, and he might try to show us how that works. So actually, I'll just start things off, and the first question I have for you, Matt, is why Lost Lander?
The name Lost Lander, it kind of has a mixture of stories that went into it, but more, I guess the reason why I really like the name is because my mother came up with it. She got really excited about coming up with a band name for us, and she had a dream where she visited a lake called Lost Land Lake. It was a place that she went when she was a kid a bunch, and so she suggested it one day, and I thought it was great. So I decided to go with that, and I also liked it because it has that sentimental reason, which is because of my mother, and then it also has this reason, which is that I'm a huge space nut, and it kind of sounds like maybe it has something to do with a lunar lander or some other planetary lander or something like that. So.
Okay, very nice. Well, so speaking of which, you said you're a space enthusiast. You love space. Do you have a particularly favorite lander or favorite spacecraft that either is dead now or maybe is still working?
Well, I mean, I love reading about the Apollo spacecraft, and I read Neil Armstrong's autobiography, and I love reading about that period of time, that period of space travel, because there was, the stories behind those spacecraft are so fascinating. They were under so much pressure, and it was so new, and the stuff that they were doing seems impossible with the equipment that they were using. That lunar lander, the Apollo series, the lunar landers were like the Wright brothers' first aircraft or something. They were barely held together, and you could put your arm through the wall on accident, and they were. I definitely get excited about reading about that stuff, and have lots of pictures of those, and those astronauts too. They were the toughest there is.
I think the Apollo program inspired a lot of people. I think it did me, to be honest. That was probably the first experience with space I had, was learning about that. It's very, very cool. Now I want to ask you a question again that's actually more music related.
Sure.
And that is vinyl or CD?
Which one's better?
Yeah.
Or streaming, right?
Yeah.
They're both great for different reasons. Vinyl's great because it's like that, lunar excursion module. It's the old school. It's the original, or not even original, but it's it's got this great warmness to it. This analog quality to it. But the digital music, I love that too. I'm getting really excited. We're exploring new ways to use digital technology and ways to do different things with streaming that you could never do with a medium like vinyl records. So that's a great question, though. How about you? What's your
Well,
listen to vinyl records?
well, like you said, it depends on what you're doing. But I will say, I guess maybe on things that okay, full disclosure, my wife and I have recently bought a turntable. It's a used one, and we bought some vinyl, and we raided my in-laws' vinyl collection. And I gotta tell you, there's things in the vinyl that have recorded, in the past on vinyl to begin with, that you hear on the vinyl you don't hear on the CD. And it's maybe just little tiny things, but you notice them, and it's like, wow, that's really cool. And it does sound really good, along with the popping and scratching you get with the old vinyl. But
yeah.
But like you said, it depends. I guess it depends. Although right now, I guess I would say I'm a huge vinyl fan.
Well, and the other thing that I've started to notice, my husband's a amateur guitar player. He's someone that collects guitars, plays guitars, but it's personal. He gets paid to do other things. And he has amps that have the old vacuum tube technology.
Oh, yeah.
And they sound distinctly different than what comes out of digital speakers that you might hook up to anything. And so it's kind of crazy to think that the technologies that are 50, 60 years old, those are the ones that really have the more pleasant audio to the ears.
Yeah. Yeah, and what's interesting is those amps, those older amps, the ones with vacuum tubes in them, they sold like hotcakes, and then the solid state technology came out, and those amps became really cheap for a while. And then it didn't take very long before musicians figured out that solid state amps don't sound good. And now, most people use tube amps. I have a few different tube amps, and I don't use any solid state amps at all. I mean, they don't sound nearly as good.
So we've had a couple of questions come in, and I want to apologize up front that when the questions come in, it takes a while, so I may not ask your question right away because the aggregator has to kind of catch up. But here we got two questions in, so I want to ask, what star is Matt from?
What star? Well, if I had to pick one, man, that's a good question. I guess I'd probably Polaris. I'm from Alaska, so that North Star is a pretty special star to me. It's in the Alaska flag song. We sing about the North Star, so probably the Pole Star would probably be my favorite star. Or I guess he or she wasn't asking what's my favorite. It's where I'm from. I'm from the North Star.
Very good. Very good. Okay, and I guess along those same lines, what percentage of the band is extraterrestrial? Who's in the audience tonight?
It's funny. When we go on tour, we do a lot of touring, and we drive through the Southwest. And whenever we're in the desert, we always put on podcasts that have to do with aliens and extraterrestrials. And our drummer Pat always sticks his head out the window, and he's always looking for UFOs because I think he believes that he might be an actual alien.
So I have to ask, what podcasts would you recommend for driving through the desert?
Oh, the paranormal podcasts come from Pat. He's the drummer.
Okay, we're not going to recommend any of those on this show.
I love podcasts, though. It depends. If you're in the mood to get freaked out, those paranormal podcasts are great. If you're if you want to learn about science, I love the Titanium Physicist podcast. I don't know if you've heard of that one.
No, that's a new one.
Oh, it's great. It's great.
Cool.
Yeah, and then there's Star Stuff with Stuart Gary.
I have to admit, I'm partial to Astronomy Cast because I co-host it.
Oh, of course, Astronomy Cast.
But no, that's awesome. And we also have to continue the out of left field questions. We have Nick Azar asking, what's your favorite space music or song, or I guess space related music or song?
David Bowie's pretty great. I'm a huge David Bowie song, or a Bowie fan. What am I trying to say?
Okay, can you tie David Bowie to space?
Oh yeah, well the Ziggy Stardust.
Okay, yes.
The whole album, he pretends like he's a character. He plays a character from outer space, this guy who fell to Earth. And he's the star of a movie called The Man Who Fell to Earth.
Right.
So,
excellent.
Yeah, David Bowie kind of nailed it. It's hard to beat David Bowie, you know.
Well, actually, okay, this doesn't necessarily beat David Bowie, but I will just mention, just a little pitch for MyMoon. We actually did an interview with his son, who goes by Duncan Jones. So he directed the movie Moon with Sam Rockwell, and I cannot remember the one he just did a year or so ago. But we interviewed him, and that interview is on the MyMoon website, so I'll go check that out. And it's also on our YouTube page. But another question come in, and I guess we're sticking with this ET theme for the first part of the evening. But what's your perspective on intelligent life elsewhere in the universe, and has Earth been visited?
Well, you know, I don't know if you pay attention to the Kepler findings. I'm guessing you do.
Yeah.
But recently, there was the news about Kepler 62F, which is it's the most Earth-like planet they've found, and they keep finding these Earth-like planets, and it's very possible that there's far more habitable planets just in our own galaxy, let alone the universe. So, I mean, if you were just to crunch the numbers, it's impossible that there isn't intelligent life. And at the rate that we're going, it's just a matter of time before our technology improves to the point where we can travel from star to star. And I think there's no doubt about it. I think that if you really want to know, if you really want to go far out, I think that it's entirely possible that our own life here on Earth didn't start here. There's a lot of evidence that shows that.
Yeah, that's called the panspermia theory. So panspermia. The idea is that life here began out there, to quote Battlestar Galactica,
Exactly.
and it was carried here via comets or interstellar dust or some other medium. We know that it's easy to bombard Earth with rocks from Mars. Hit Mars hard enough, the rocks get thrown into space, they come to Earth, and when the dinosaurs were killed off by an asteroid impact back then, my favorite scientific quote describing this event is, when the asteroid hit the Earth, soil, water, dinosaurs were thrown into orbit and into outer space.
That's so, wow, I hadn't thought about that.
Yeah.
So the cycle continues.
It's one heck of a way to die.
Yeah. Maybe we'll be so lucky. I hope not.
No.
But I think without a doubt that's probably what happened. I just read this article about how if you run Moore's law in reverse, Moore's law refers to the ability to store data doubles every 18 months. And so if you apply that same equation to our genetic code and the rate at which it might, our genetic code is getting more and more complex as evolution has been continuing. And if you were to run Moore's law in reverse and apply it to human DNA, it would mean that our DNA is actually 14 billion years old. So that's crazy too. That's something to think about. But
well, and there's added complexity to it, because there's actually life forms out there, I think plants, that have even more complicated DNA than humans have. So it's interesting what's kept, what's lost, how things evolve, and it's more than something as straightforward as Moore's law. And I find it interesting that you're so passionately certain that there's intelligent life out there. There's something called the Fermi paradox. Enrico Fermi, a scientist up in Chicago decades ago, basically walked into the cafeteria one day and said, "Where are they? Where are the aliens?" Because he figured it would only take 1 million years or so to send probes out to basically forge across the entire galaxy. And so when you think about this, have you ever gone so far as to think about the where are they, why aren't they here right now question?
Yeah, I mean, it's hard not to think about that. And, you know, there are all these theories that they're here now and we just don't know that they're actually here, or they're hiding, or they don't want to contact us, or, yeah, I don't, it is a good question. I don't know. And, I mean, how could I, but, I mean, if you think about how advanced we're going to be in a couple of 100 years, and you know, it's hard to even imagine what a life form that is that much more advanced than us would, or what they would want to do, like what their priority would be once they got here, what their objectives would be, you know. So.
And this is where it gets interesting to have these dialogues, not just scientist to scientist, but scientist to artist to musician to philosopher, because we don't know. Mm-hmm. And so we need to think beyond what we normally do. Where do you seek your inspiration in doing your music? You spoke about your mother. Where else does inspiration come from?
Well, I am also... Oh, got a dog. I spend a lot of time in the woods. I'm a forester, and so I work outside, and I definitely seek inspiration just from being out in nature. And stargazing is one of the best natural experiences. You know, if you're looking for inspiration, just looking up on a clear night it's hard not to get it. And I grew up in Alaska, and so the sky was very active, and with northern lights, and in the wintertime it was, you know, the stars were very bright and very beautiful. But yeah, I definitely look to the natural world, and you know, when you go out into the forest, there's worlds within worlds that you can just get lost in forever, you know, like these little microcosms. And I guess I look for things in my own music when I'm creating it to try to find, I try to work on things until I start to get a feeling, that sort of feeling, well, I don't want to say awe, it's not like playing music has that same sort of awe feeling, but when you start to play something and it starts to feel to you like it's coming from somewhere else, or it's connecting with something in a much deeper way, like the forest or, you know, the stars can give you that feeling like you're connecting with something that's inside of you, but that's also much bigger than you are. Yeah, I know that's a contradiction, but I suppose that's sort of what religion does for a lot of people too, is, you know, they find something that gives them this feeling that feels like it's deep inside of them, that's very personal, but it's also gigantic, that it's also encompasses, you know, everything. It's like the big and the small at the same time.
In science, we have the term resonance, where you can take a tuning fork or similar device and set it vibrating, and if it's the same frequency as something else, it will set that other thing vibrating. And in this way, you can use a tuning fork to set a much larger object resonating. And so it's interesting that so many of these concepts actually have a scientific parallel out there. Now we have a question from Nick Azar out in the audience. Again, he's asking, would you ever do a song set or a set of songs for a space cause? 1% of the budget for NASA, let's go to the moon, etc. Outreach. It's our audience is putting you on the spot. Feel free to avoid the question, but passing it on.
I would love to do a concert for that. Yeah. I feel pretty passionate. It's really too bad that NASA had the funding cuts that it's had in the last few years, and
yeah.
So it needs to come from somewhere. I think they're going to need a lot more money than what musicians can come up with. But who knows? I mean, I definitely think it's worth the effort. Anything that we can do, anything that I could do, or Lost Lander could do, I would want to do. Definitely. The answer to that is a loud yes. Yeah.
Well, that'd be pretty cool.
Yeah,
Who else would you want if let's say you did that a benefit? I'll call it a benefit album, or even like a live concert. Who else would you? Who would you? And let's say we had you be the number one person. Who would you invite to be part of it?
Invite to be part of that, and this is just a dream list. I could just ask anybody.
we're going to allow you to fantasize.
Well, I'd probably want to invite Chris Hadfield. That's the commander of the ISS, right? That's
Yeah, that'd be awesome. Yes.
He's a musician, you know. He has all these videos. He posts these videos online all the time of him playing the guitar and singing. And he did like a webcast where he performed with the Bare Naked Ladies. He co-wrote a song with the Bare Naked Ladies, and then they performed it together with him in space, kind of like we're doing right now, where we're all in separate locations and they performed together. Pretty cool. So we'd have to invite him. I'm sure he's got all the time in the world, you know. He's just running the space station. Who else? You know, it'd be great to get some, you know, ambient guys like Philip Glass or something, or Brian Eno would be awesome to have involved in something like that. You know, his music feels so spacey. Yeah, I mean, they would be the same musicians. I mean, if I was putting together a dream concert, it would be my favorite bands or artists. I'd ask Peter Gabriel to come. You know,
That'd be cool.
You know, I mean, who knows if that kind of stuff would happen? This is a great question. I've never let myself fantasize about my dream bill before. But
It's always good to have that bucket list of people you'd love to share the stage with.
yeah, for sure.
Well, we're glad we could help contribute. And another question is: will you be working with Brent Knopf on your next album?
Yeah, we actually just booked 5 days together at the end of the month. We're going to go up to Alaska and work in a cabin for 5 days and work on the songs. Most of the songs are 80% of the way written, and so I'm going to get together with Brent, and he and I are going to flesh out the final 20% of the songs, and if he'll be involved beyond that, I'm not totally sure yet. I hope so. I love working with him, and he's getting ready to start a new Ramona Falls record, so I'm not sure how much time he has, but yeah, I hope so. I hope that he's involved more than that, is what I mean. I love working with him. So, who asked that question? I'm curious.
Well, it's a Twitter handle, Alan or Alien.
Yeah, good name.
So same one asked all the other ET questions.
Oh, I see.
Another one is: would you visit Earth I believe at this moment in time if you were an advanced alien and risk being put in a zoo?
So what's the question exactly?
So I suppose if you were an alien and you came to the Earth, would you do it maybe knowing that you might be put in a zoo?
Oh, I see. Like that might be a deterrent. It's hard for me to believe that if an alien was smart enough to figure out how to get from Alpha Centauri to here, wherever, that we would be able to put that person or alien into a zoo. I doubt they're going to be afraid of us, I guess, is what I would say to that.
Well, I hope I interpreted that question correctly, too. But yeah, I would agree. I would think we wouldn't put them in a zoo. I think we'd want to talk to them and not put them in a cage.
We'd want to get them on a MyMoon, webcast.
Well, there's always the concern, though, if you've seen the movie District 9, that we will potentially do something cruel and harsh because we don't necessarily treat everyone fairly. So let's hope that your brighter future is the one that someday becomes the reality.
I mean, is that what you think would happen? Like, do you think the...
I don't know. It's one of these things where I think it really depends on the circumstances with which we eventually encounter other life forms. One of the things that's been really fascinating me lately is we suddenly have all of these different TV shows that have this almost post-apocalyptic future. There's Falling Skies, where the aliens have come to take over the planet, and the human race is getting enslaved biologically. There's the new series Defiance, where the Earth was getting terraformed. So it's hard to figure out, with all of these horrible possibilities that people imagine, we're just as likely to do the horrible things, but that doesn't make for good television. So will our better selves win out? I can hope that our better selves will win out, but I have to admit it's probably the flip of a coin.
Sure. Well, it's hard to imagine a species that would be, I mean, this might sound really negative, but human beings are very violent. I mean, if you look at our history, but if you look at the evidence, humans are becoming less violent the longer our civilization is around. And there's a lot of evidence that's showing that, I mean, even physically, we're looking more and more like domesticated animals, you know, like a lot of the same things that will happen to a dog when it goes from a wolf to a dog are happening to human beings with time. So it's showing that we're actually mellowing out, and there's so much more need for us to cooperate with one another because we're getting closer and closer together. So it's hard to imagine that any society that had to go through what a society needs to go through in order to get to the point where they can travel through space and to travel possibly, you know, faster than light to get from one place to another, that they wouldn't be similar to us. And by the time that we get to the point that we're doing that, I would like to believe that human beings aren't going to go to some other planet and annihilate them or enslave them or put them into zoos. But maybe I'm an optimist. I don't know.
Yeah, I think for me it depends on what I ate for breakfast that day.
So, Matt, you on your current album, there's a song called Dead Moon. Now, I'm assuming that has nothing to do with the lack of geologic activity on the moon. Maybe it does. I don't know. What's Dead Moon? What's that about?
That's actually inspired by Neil Armstrong. What's that? I'm forgetting if it's Neil Armstrong or Buzz Aldrin. One of them referred to the moon landscape as beautiful desolation. And I really like that metaphor, the idea that you could be in a place that's absolutely beautiful but is also completely desolate. And I really like that contrast. It's just a good metaphor for a relationship, for example.
Yeah, that was Buzz Aldrin. I believe it was Magnificent Desolation.
Magnificent. Thank you.
Yeah.
Magnificent Desolation. Yeah.
Okay, so that song was inspired by that quote.
Well, it was yeah, more or less. I mean, I just like that contrast.
Your drummer is talking to us on Twitter. Hughes PDX462 just typed, Matt, it's your drummer. I can confirm that I am half alien. Just got the DNA test back.
So I consider we're 1/8 alien as a band. That answers that question.
Okay.
Well, very good. Now, I kind of ran this by you earlier, Matt, and I don't know if you've had a chance to think about it as we've been going on this evening. But one of the things I was wondering is, some of you may know, in 1977 we launched the Voyager spacecraft, and they each had a golden record on it. And this record has recordings of sounds from all over the Earth, including songs. So there's songs from people we've all know, like Bach, Beethoven, Mozart, Chuck Berry. Kid you not, Chuck Berry's like the only rock song on there. But then also other kind of classical and other international type songs. So a question I have for Matt is, what if we were to launch a new spacecraft now to do and has something similar, and we put a disc on it that recorded sights and sounds from the Earth, but we wanted to represent music, that includes the past 35 years. What are some songs or artists that you would like to say you think would best exemplify the past 35 years?
Past 35 years. Those records are made out of gold, aren't they? Aren't they made out of some material they're made out of some precious metal, I think.
Yeah, I'm pretty sure they're made out of gold because gold is malleable enough to be able to record records, which is one of those technologies that you don't need to worry about formatting. DVDs, CDs,
Right.
those someday we will lose the ability to read, but records are always readable.
Yeah. Well, let's see. I think that you'd want to throw some jazz records on there because that's, I feel like that's a pretty important art form. And so I would pick Miles Davis' Kind of Blue for that. It's kind of the seminal jazz record. But I think that you'd need to have some real pop music on there too. Yeah, I think that you'd need to have a Justin Timberlake song on there or a Robin song or something like that because people, that's what you'd need to have something that people en masse have listened to, Gangnam Style or something. I hope not Gangnam Style, but maybe Call Your Girlfriend by Robin. That's a pretty great song. And it also sums up the human condition in a pretty great way. So.
Well, I need to look that one up. There's a question from Nick. Would you buy a ticket to space on a space tourism flight? They're only 100 to 200K right now. Maybe Lost Lander can book one and perform in space.
Yes. I've wanted to go to space so long. You have no idea. I would absolutely. I don't have a couple $100K lying around to buy a space tourism ticket right now, but yeah, I am. Constantly trying to dream of ways on how I can get to space. I wanted to try to figure out a way to raise money to be the first person that recorded a record in space, but I think that the captain of the ISS at this point has already done that, so he kind of beat me to the punch. But to be honest, I really want to sleep in space. That's the main thing that I want to do in space. I want to know what it's like to be completely limp and not have anything touching you at all, not a mattress and not get a kink in your neck and yeah. So that was kind of a tangent, but there you go.
Okay.
So we have on Twitter, Eleanor Alien is asking, what are your favorite space movies?
Well, Moon, that is an incredible movie. You were just talking about that one. 2001 is incredible. The Battlestar Galactica series is amazing.
That's my favorite.
Oh man, they're so good. I think a better question is, what movie about space don't I like? My favorite movie of all time is a movie called Solaris, and it's not, not the George Clooney version, although that one's okay, but the Russian one.
Yeah.
We have a song about that movie too.
Really? Okay.
You're a big fan of that movie?
Yeah.
Yeah, it's incredible. I watched it probably 10 times.
So I've never heard of this movie.
Oh, wow. Okay. It's a classic. It's also a short story. I'm not going to spoil it. Watch the original Russian version of Solaris, and if not, then listen to the Audible book. Don't go to the George Clooney one first. Just don't.
Agreed.
Okay. Alrighty. New question just popped up. Matt, will your new album have similar nature and scientific themes that DRRT had? What is your inspiration for the new album?
Well, the inspiration for the new record, a lot of the themes they're a little different. A lot of them have to do with I'm not to get too serious here, but I had a death in the family in the last couple of years, and I went through a pretty big breakup. So there are a few songs that deal with loss and just sort of the acceptance of change in your life. And I know that sounds kind of depressing, but it's not. It's not actually. The songs, I don't think, are depressing. It's more of trying to come to terms with change in your life, which is something that I think is something that I just had to learn how to do in a big way. It's not something that I had done before. But in terms of mixing contrasts of sounds and stuff, I still want to do a lot of that, like where we're taking from using technology and using synthesizers and using computer programs and mixing it with acoustic elements and hopefully having songs at the cores of the song. Having a song that could just be played on an acoustic instrument at the core of a song that's layered with a lot of different sounds using technology. So a lot of those themes will be the same, but the themes of the songs I think are a little, I feel like they're for me tackling some more existential issues. I hope that answered the question.
No, I think you did. Yeah. All right. Cool. Very cool.
You went after the human experience.
Yeah, but I mean the last record was like that too. I mean, I think science is going after the human experience too. I think it's just another way to get there.
That's an awesome way to look at it.
Yeah.
So, when you were in school, did you take a lot of science classes?
I did. I had a great science teacher in high school that got me into it. I think that was in 9th grade. A guy named Clay Good. He was a jazz drummer too, so I just thought he was the coolest guy in the whole world. He had us do these cool experiments, and then he'd come over to my house sometimes, and we'd play jazz in my garage. I wasn't very good at the time, but he definitely showed me that science could be cool, which it totally, so. But then later on in college, I took astronomy and a lot of earth science classes and that kind of stuff.
Cool. Very cool.
Another one just came in. Question: what does the monolith represent to you in 2001: A Space Odyssey?
Wow. Man, these are serious questions. Monolith? The monolith is like this big, dark, unknown thing in the sky, It's like the unknown future, I think, is what the monolith is. Yeah.
One of the things I absolutely love is there's a lot of scientists that think that the most likely place to find life in our solar system is the moon Europa, which in the Space Odyssey series is the one world that we're not allowed to go to. Yeah. Have you ever thought about that? What's your reaction if you have?
Oh, I love, yeah, that's right, they get the message. That's at the end of the second book?
Yeah,
right?
2010.
Yeah. I can't believe that we're not there right now. Some ice drilling machine, trying to get down under the surface. Yeah, that if I was in charge of the space program, that's where we'd be headed,
You just made all the outer solar system planetary scientists blissfully happy because they felt like the neglected children of planetary science for many years, and I think all of them agree with you completely.
I am glad. Do you know any of those types, by the way? I'm assuming you do.
Yeah. There's actually this one fabulous scientist, Brittany Schmidt, down at the University of Texas, who figured out that the ice flows on Europa are driven by hydraulic pressures, which is for some reason something that people hadn't been thinking of. And so they work very similar to glaciers sliding over, sliding into the sea, sliding over melted liquid on Earth. And so when we look at Europa, we're essentially seeing a glacier-covered world. And that's just an interesting new way to think about it.
Wow, that's crazy. Yeah. And then they think that there's a layer underneath that, though. That's liquid water, right?
Yeah, and they think that the very core of the planet is rock, including a molten core like we have here on Earth, because Europa is essentially being constantly squished like a squishy ball. And if you take like your normal everyday stress ball and just squish it over and over and over, it will heat up. Well, if you take an entire moon and squish it over and over and over on a cycle that's just hours long, it's going to, over time, heat up, and in this case probably never actually have cooled off when it forms. So there's going to be those deep sea vents under the European ice, under the European ocean, just like we have deep sea vents here on Earth. And we know that on Earth, deep sea vents don't receive sunlight, but they are thriving with life. And so there's that possibility that just as life on Earth is adapted to the deep sea vents, perhaps life on Europa originated at the deep sea vents.
Yeah, and that's so fascinating. And it seems like there's a really strong case for that. And I mean, it seems like people fixate on walking on Mars because we can get humans there, but let's get a drill on Europa. Let's go visit those extremophiles on the seafloor. Of course, they might not be very interesting to talk to, but it'd still be exciting.
I'm not worried about talking to all the aliens. I'm perfectly happy to discover deep sea cucumbers on another planet. That would make me happy.
Yeah.
All right. Well, anybody else out there have any questions? Give you maybe another minute or so to submit one. So this has been great, Matt. Thanks so much for joining us tonight. And we're actually going to ask you to just kind of leave us. Pamela, I think you're muted still.
Yeah, I was. So I was going to say, for those joining late who don't know how to leave us questions, you can either leave a comment on the YouTube page, tweet at us using the hashtag MyMoonLPI, or leave a comment on the Google Plus event page that's hosted by MyMoon.
Yes, thank you. And here's one. What music have you been listening to recently?
Talk Talk, a band called Talk Talk. Their record, The Spirit of Eden, I can't get enough of. I've listened to it about 1 million times, and I think it's one of the best records ever made. So that one, it came out, it's not a recent record. It was released in the late 80s, but yeah, so Talk Talk. The new Local Natives record is really great.
Can people find you on Spotify?
Sure, yeah. You can find the Lost Lander record. And it's Dirt is the name of our album, and it's DRRT is how it's spelled. Yeah, and do you want to see this planetarium before we log off?
Yes.
Yeah.
So here's the album. Hopefully it's bright enough to see. My studio is kind of dark. Maybe I can turn on this overhead. I don't know if that helps at all, but so this is the album, and the CD comes out to the side, and this is set down, and there's a CD here, which gets pulled out, and on here there's a constellation map.
That's cool.
But these constellations are fictional. They're not. You won't actually find these in the sky. There's a constellation that was invented for each one of the songs on the record.
Oh.
And then this, which I took out of the folds up like this, and then it pops out into this triangle box. And if you put your flashlight in this hole right here, light will pop out of all these little holes in the top of the box, and it'll cast those constellations onto the ceiling. And the box lights up, and unfortunately, it doesn't really show up on the webcam, but on the inside of the box are little pictograms of each one of the constellations. I don't know if you can see them in there.
That's really awesome.
And so when the light is applied to the box, the whole box lights up, and you can see the little pictures come out around, you know, like there'll be a little pictogram that shows up around that group of stars. And then each little pictogram represents one of the songs. So these are sold out, though. But if you really want one, you can email me, and we have a few copies laying around, and I could send a few more of them off. But so
very awesome.
That's really cool. So I got to ask you, would this album be good on vinyl, or is it better to have on a CD?
Well, I wish that we could do these forever, but they were too expensive to produce, so we had to let them run out. So I'd say if you were going to get the record, I would say get it on vinyl. The playlist is better on the vinyl record too, I think.
Okay.
The playlist is a little different between the CD and the vinyl version.
Oh, that's interesting.
I wanted to have like kind of a more mellow side and an up-tempo side originally when putting the album together, but it didn't really work when it was just one long playlist on a CD. But I was able to do it on the vinyl record, so
that makes sense.
Okay, very cool.
Very cool.
Okay, we have another question here, and I think we'll probably close with this one. But let me ask it first. So what do you think about SETI and the idea that looking for aliens who are using radio waves is too technologically antiquated?
And this is from your drummer.
Yes.
Is it? Pat, why don't you call me and I'll let you give the answer. That using radio waves is an antiquated way of looking for alien life. Well, it's kind of the best we got, right? I mean, what else are we gonna do? We don't. I mean, the technology to look for other particles or something, or tachyons, or I don't know what, but I mean that's gonna be so expensive. I mean, we can.
What's kind of cool is we now have the technology to actually measure the atmospheres around alien planets. And if we see oxygen, we know there's at least plants. But potentially, if we see an atmosphere as polluted as we've done to ours in the past, we'll be able to identify industrial civilizations by how they destroy their atmosphere. So, but you're totally right when it comes to communications. Tachyons, gravity waves, all these other crazy high-tech ways that science fiction lays out, all we have is the science of today, which is radio.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and unfortunately it moves at the speed of light, so we're pretty limited.
Yeah.
All right. Well, before we actually leave, I'm going to leave one more thing for you to ponder, Matt, and I'm going to go through a couple of little housekeeping things. Okay. And just what would you want to leave our audience with tonight? What idea or what maybe question do you want to leave them with? So just think about that for a few seconds, a minute or so, and then we'll come back to you before we leave. Mm-hmm. So thank you everybody for joining us this evening, and we were talking with Matt Sheehy, who's the lead singer for Lost Lander, the group Lost Lander out of Portland, Oregon. We've been talking about space and music and space. It's been a lot of fun. This Hangout has been a production of both MyMoon and CosmoQuest. We've been working together for a few months now on this, and it's been great. We really appreciate CosmoQuest's help in learning how to do these Hangouts. And our next Hangout like this together will be on May 21st in 2 weeks with Brian Day from NASA Ames, and he's going to talk with us about the Laddie mission to the moon, which launches and it's scheduled to launch in August. So the next mission to the moon is going to look at the dust environment around the moon. So we'll get to chat with him about that mission. And then CosmoQuest is having their next weekly space hangout is this Friday, May 10th. At 2 p.m. Central. Is that correct, Pamela?
That's correct. And actually, if you can't wait that long to get science, tomorrow we are going to be holding our Learning Space Hangout at 4 p.m. Pacific, 6 p.m. Central, 7 p.m. Eastern, midnight London. And we're going to be talking with a pair of scientists from the Dawn mission about the asteroid Vesta and Vesta mappers and how you can be part of doing science.
All right, very cool. And actually, one more question did come up, and I want to ask that, Matt, and then we can get to that closing thought. But this question says, who came up with the idea for having the planetarium cover? It's very cool, and do you have any ideas for the new album cover yet?
Yeah, all of the artwork, including the cover, came from the wonderfully brilliant and bizarre mind of a man named Stefan Nadelman. If you get an opportunity to look him up, you will not be disappointed. He's mainly an animator, and he's done a lot of really cool animated videos, and you can find him on YouTube, or find a lot of his works on YouTube. But he's a great friend. He also did our music video for Wonderful World. But he came up with that. He came up with the images, all the images on our artwork. So yeah. So that guy's awesome. Stefan Nadelman. It's Nadelman. So, in a closing thought, I suppose science is amazing and art is amazing. And I think one thing to think about or to keep in mind is just when you're doing anything, whether it's with science or with art, like try to think about its bigger impact on the world and what you're doing, and hopefully keep in mind that, if we can leave the world a better place than we found it, then we're doing things the right way. So, yeah. Peace.
All right. Well, thank you again, Matt, so much for taking the time with us this evening. Thank you, Pamela, for joining us again. And thanks to all of you out there for joining us. And again, CosmoQuest is a learning space hangout tomorrow at 4 p.m. Pacific. Their next weekly space hangout is Friday at 2 p.m. Central. And the next MyMoon CosmoQuest hangout will be May 21st, 7 p.m. Central, with Brian Day from NASA Ames talking about the Laddie mission. So we hope to see you all then. So everybody have a good night.
Cool. Good night.